Hi everyone, this is Mohammed Kubaib. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about a device or virtual machine compliance based conditional access using Intune. In the past, we have seen multiple ways of applying conditional access policy to secure the AVD or Azure infrastructure. However, in this video, we are going to discuss about how we can apply conditional access policy based on the compliance of device or Azure virtual machine. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the bell icon for the future updates. If you want to learn more about Azure, Citrix or FSlogix, you can check out my bestseller Udemy course. The link for the Udemy course has been given in the description of this video. When it comes to Windows operating system, whether it is running on a physical Windows device such as laptop or physical PC or virtual machines such as Azure or Citrix DAAS virtual machines, so we have a number of compliance policies available in Microsoft Intune. So we can apply those compliance policy and we can evaluate our device health based on the compliance. So once we apply the compliance policy to the devices or virtual machines, Intune will evaluate the compliance or the health of that particular device or the virtual machines, and then it will label as compliant or non-compliant device in Microsoft Intune. So using these details, we can apply conditional access policy, and based on the compliance status, the conditional policy will evaluate and it will allow or block the connectivity to your applications which is integrated with Azure Active Directory accordingly. For example, if you have a mission critical applications which is integrated with Azure Active Directory and you want to allow access to that mission critical application only from the compliant device, you can apply this type of conditional access policy based on the compliance of the device, and you can control access to the mission critical applications so that your application will stay safe and secure. There are a number of compliance policies are available in Intune. We will go through some of the compliance policy. So when it comes to device health, first one is the required BitLocker. So this policy particularly check whether the device is having BitLocker or not. So if it is having BitLocker, it will mark the device as compliant, or else it will mark it as non-compliant. However, the BitLocker, which is only applicable to the physical device, it won't applicable to the virtual machine or Azure virtual machine session host. Similarly, we have a compliance policy with respect to the operating system version. So you can set minimum and maximum versions and you can evaluate the compliance accordingly. Let's say you are setting a Windows operating system minimum version as 10.0.17134.1. If any operating system or devices in your infrastructure which is having lower than this version will be marked as non-compliant. So any access from that particular PC or virtual machine we can deny using conditional access policy with the help of this particular minimum operating system version parameter. So similarly, we have a number of other compliance policies as well. You can check out and you can apply accordingly. And one important note here is some of the policies are not applicable to virtual machines. It is only applicable to the physical PCs such as laptop and desktops. So you have to carefully evaluate and select the required policies and apply accordingly. So before we configure conditional access policy to evaluate the compliance, we need to make sure some of the prerequisites are available. So first thing is dynamic device group. So in Intune, we can apply policies to either all the users or all the groups. However, if you wanted to apply the policies for some of the devices, so you need to group the devices. So we have a feature called dynamic device group in Intune, where we can create a group of virtual machines or physical PCs based on certain parameter. For example, with the help of host name, for example, if the Azure virtual machine group starts with AVD, then we can define a parameter within the group saying that all the virtual machine names starting with AVD should be part of this particular group. So similarly, there are n number of parameters available, so you can set accordingly and you can create a group of virtual desktops or physical PCs, and then on top of it you can apply the policies. So in this video we are targeting to create a dynamic device group, and then we will create a compliance policy and apply the compliance policy to the dynamic device group, and then we will define conditional access policy, whether to allow application or deny the application access based on the device compliance.
So let's create a device group. So we need to go to the group tab here. So I am in the group blade now. So let's click on new group. Here I'm going to select as security group, and under group name I'm going to enter the name as Intune config profile group. Then under membership type we need to select a dynamic device, and then we need to select dynamic device members. Here we need to click on dynamic query. So here we are going to define a query to add the device to this particular group. So I'm going to select as display name, which starts with test. So the meaning of this is any VM which having a name starts with a test, it will automatically gets added to this particular group. If I go to my Azure portal and my virtual machines, here we can see we have a VM called test-intune 0. So automatically this device will get added to that particular group. So even if I create 100 more VMs with a test hyphen intune hyphen 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 till 100, all those VMs automatically will get added to that particular group. That is the reason we are referring it as dynamic group, and it is doing with the help of the rule which we are going to set. So here we have to click OK, and then we can click on create. So now our group is ready, which is Intune config profile group. So let's see whether the machine got added to this particular group or not. So now we have our device, which is test-intune 0 part of our device group. So in order to create a compliance policy, so we need to go to the device tab. So under device tab, we will have an option called compliance policies. So let's go to this compliance policy blade and let's hit on create policy. So here we need to select the platform, which is Windows 10 and later, and then click on create. Here I'm going to enter a name as AVD compliance policy. Then click next. These are the settings related to the compliance, so you can select accordingly. For the first one is custom compliance. So if you have any custom configuration, which may be any script which checks for specific compliance policies, etc., so you can choose that script. Otherwise, Intune will have its own policies related to compliance, so you can choose that as well. For example, if you select require BitLocker, so it will check for the device which is having BitLocker or not. So if it is not having BitLocker, it will mark as non-compliance. So anyways, BitLocker etc., which doesn't apply for Azure Virtual Desktop as of today, so you can ignore this. So similarly, device properties, so here we have an option called minimum operating system, maximum operating system. So if you set minimum operating system some particular version, if it is not matching that particular version, then it will mark the device as non-compliant. For example, so this is the format which we need to use in the minimum or maximum version, which is for Windows 10 it is 10.0. So this is the version which you get it from the Windows operating system by running winvar command. So here you can see I'm running a winvar command, and here I'm getting the output, which is Windows version 21H2, OS build is 19.0.4 and 2.0.0.6. So I'm going to enter this value, which is 19.0.4 2.0.0.6. So 2.0.0.6. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste it over here. So it means my operating system of my Azure Virtual Desktop should be minimum of this version. Let's say if I create any VMs which is 21 or 20H2 or 1906 etc., then it will mark as non-compliance. Similarly, you can define maximum operating system as well. So for this demo, I'm not going to define maximum. I'm only targeting minimum operating system. So rest you can configure according to your requirement. Some of the policies only applicable to mobile devices. So you have to be make sure while choosing the policies. So similarly, under configuration manager complaints, so if you have SSEM where you are defining the compliance policies, so you can select this. Otherwise, you can head over to other policies. So this is very important policy where you can see here you have the encryption details over here and device security. So you can enable firewall, TPM, antivirus, anti-spyware, etc., etc. So if your virtual machine is comply with all these things, for example, if the firewall is turned on and it is having the TPM and antivirus, etc., then it will mark this device as compliant. So let's select all this and then we can select next. Similarly, we have many other options over here, real time protection, which is related to Defender, etc. So if your device is onboarded to Defender, then you can select these options as well. So under Microsoft Defender for endpoint, so you have further more options, so you can choose as per your requirement. For this demo purpose, we are only going to select minimum operating system and firewall, TPM, antivirus, and anti-spyware. So click next. So here we need to select as send email to end user or retire the non-compliance device. So this is the action. For example, if my device is non-compliant, then either I can send the email to the user and then, or I can retire the non-compliant device. It means I can remove the device from the Intune itself. So you can choose accordingly. By default, one action is already enabled, which is mark device non-compliant. So it will be immediately marked as non-compliant. For example, if the device is not having a antivirus, then it will immediately marked as non-compliant. So you have the option to set the timer over here. You can enter the dates or time to which it will wait, or else by default you can keep it as immediately to make it as non-compliant. Then click next, and here we have an option called add groups or add all users. However, we do not have the option called all computers or all devices. That is the reason we should have a dynamic device group. So let's select our device group which we have created in the earlier demo. This is my device group. I'm going to select and then I will click on next. I will click on create. So now we have created a compliance policy and we have assigned that policy to our device group. So now this policy will get verified in the device, and if the device is matching all the parameter which we are defined, then it will be shown as compliant in the Intune portal, or else it will show as non-compliant. So I'm going to the device blade. So this is my device which is part of the group which we have applied the compliance policy. So let's go to the device and we will see the policy status. I'm going to the compliance policy, which is device compliance. As you can see here, AVD comply policy which we just created, it is still showing as not evaluated. It means it did not do the check. So let's go to the overview and let's hit on synchronize. So it will do the force sync so that it will get evaluated and ultimately it will show you the compliance status. So whatever you see over here, this was the previous status before applying the policy. So let's see our compliance policy now. So I'm going to the compliance policy blade and I'm selecting the compliance policy we just created over here. As you can see, it is applied as it is showing as succeeded in one virtual machine. So let's go to the virtual machine over here and we will see the status as well. So this is our virtual machine which is test-intune 0 and it is showing as compliant. And if I go to the virtual machine and under device compliance status, as you can see now it is compliant. So all the policies which is in place, so that is the reason it is showing as compliant. So the one which you can see not applicable, it means this particular policy or compliance policy which is not applicable to virtual Windows virtual desktop, which is multi-session. So rest everything is compliant. So if any policy is not matching, then it will show as failed over here. So this is how you can verify all the policies related to compliance are matched in the device, so that your device or your virtual machine is compliant in Intune portal. For the demo purpose, I'm going to create a device policy which will force the device into non-compliance. So this is the policy which is already created. So if I go to the properties and if I go to the minimum operating system version, I have set it to Windows 11. So if you go to the device properties over here, so I already set it to Windows 11. This is my laptop. So in this laptop, I'm going to run the WinVer, and this is the build for the Windows 11. So what I'm going to do in this policy is I am saying that minimum operating system version of my Azure Virtual Desktop should be this one, which means the Windows 11. However, in our setup we have Windows 10, so it means whenever this policy will get applied to the VMs or Azure Virtual Desktop multi-session VMs, it will check whether this is belongs to 11 or 10. However, our VMs will be 10 but the policy is 11, but this policy will force your device to mark as non-compliant. Why? Because the policy is set to Windows 11. So let's see the device status. I'm going to the device blade. So here I'm going to Windows, and then I'm going to see the compliance status. As you can see, I have one more device which is MDM-AVD-0. To that VM I have applied the policy. So it is saying as not compliant. Why? Because my OS version is 10.0.2006. However, the compliance policy is saying that it should be minimum of Windows 11. That is the reason it went to non-compliance. So let's go to this, and here you can see it is straight away it is telling that it is non-compliant. So this is how Intune will detect the non-compliance or compliant device, and accordingly it will mark in the portal as compliant or non-compliant. Similarly, if you go to your Azure portal, so this is my Azure portal under device, here also it will get reflected. So here you can see MDM-AVD-0, which is marked as compliant, and then it is showing as no. Whereas my other device, which is test-intune-0, which is compliant. So this is how we can apply policies in Intune to check the compliance. So in order to understand compliance policy and the conditional policy benefits, so let's go back to our whiteboard. So this is our Azure Virtual Desktop session host. For example, session host 1, session host 2, or session host 3. And here is the user. He is accessing the Azure Virtual Desktop through his personal or corporate device. And here we have our Azure Cloud. Under Azure Cloud, we have Intune service, and then we have our Azure Active Directory, which is AAD, and then we have our Azure Virtual Desktop control plane, etc., etc. So the user will connect it to Azure Virtual Desktop gateway, then he will connect it to the session host. From this session host, they may access any business applications, either it may be Exchange, online, or Teams, etc., etc. So now we have the Intune in place. So Intune will evaluate the health of our session host, whether it is compliant or it is non-compliant. So based on that data, it will present a dashboard where we can see what all the VMs or session hosts are compliant and what all the VMs or session hosts are non-compliant. So based on compliance and non-compliance, we can apply conditional access policies. So we have a Azure Active Directory over here. Any access, first it will pass through Azure Active Directory. So Azure Active Directory, it will check with Intune whether the device on which I'm accessing my business application such as Exchange Online, Teams, etc., whether it is coming from compliance device or non-compliance device. If my session host is non-compliant, then it will deny connectivity to our Exchange Online or Teams or any application which is integrated with Azure Active Directory. If the device, for example, if my session host is compliant, then it will allow access to my Exchange, it will allow access to my Teams or any application which is integrated with my Azure Active Directory. Let's say this session host, which is session host number 3, which is non-compliance, then it won't allow to access my Exchange Online or Teams or any application which is integrated with Azure Active Directory. So this is how we can use Intune to evaluate the device, and based on the evaluation whether it is compliant or non-compliant, we can allow access to our business applications. Again, that business application should be integrated with Azure Active Directory. So let's see this in demo. Before we going to the demo, so let's go to the Windows devices. Here we have two device. One device is compliant and another device is non-compliant. So we will define a conditional access policy to allow our Azure portal from these devices, and we will see the behavior. So I am going to the conditional access policy blade, and here I'm going to create a new policy. Here I'm going to define as portal access and then user or workload identities. So I'm going to define this policy to my selected user. I'm going to select FS test 2, click on select, and under cloud apps I'm going to select Azure portal. So you can choose any application which is integrated with Azure Active Directory. So here I'm going to select Azure, Microsoft Azure Management. So this is basically covers Azure portal, etc. So I'm going to click select, and then we will go to grant. So I'm going to grant the access only if the device is compliant. So this is the option. So basically it will check the compliance status from the Intune. If the device is Intune compliant, then it will grant the access. If the device is not compliant, then it will block the access. So let's click select and click on enable the policy. So before we apply the policy, let's click on the conditions. Under conditions, device platform, select all devices. So basically it will apply for all the devices such as Android, iOS, Windows, etc. So if this device are compliant, then only it will allow access to the portal. So then click on create. So now the policy is ready and it is applied to FS test. Let's log into our virtual desktop and we'll try to access it from both compliant and non-compliant device. So if we go to my device portal over here under Windows, so I have two devices over here. So let's test first the compliant device. Let's launch the RD client and we will try to log in with FS test 2 user, and we will access Azure portal inside the VDI from the compliant device. So I have logged in. So let's launch the VDI. Now I have logged in using FS test 2 to the virtual machine, which is test-intune-0, which is a compliant device. So let's try to access Azure portal from this. I'm going to launch Edge. So I'm going to access portal.azure.com. So as you can see, it will straight away will take me to the Azure portal because of single sign-on. So since the device is compliant, that is the reason it allowed me to access the Azure portal. So let's log into non-compliant device and we will see the behavior. So I'm going to log off this. I'm going to enable drain mode on the compliant device so that I can force the connection to the non-compliant device. So I'm going to make turn on drain mode off to the non-compliant. So now my non-compliant device, which is MDM-AVD-0, which as you can see here in the device portal, which is a non-compliant device. So it will take the connection and then we will see the Azure portal from that VDI. So I'm going to launch. Now I have logged into the non-compliant device. So let's verify the device name. So as you can see, it is MDM-AVD-0. So let's launch Microsoft Edge and we will try to open Azure portal. So as per our expectation, it should not open the Microsoft Azure portal because this device is non-compliant. Now I will copy this Azure portal URL and I will type it over here. So by default, it will open in Edge. So as you can see, Edge is opening to access this URL. So the moment it is trying to access Azure portal, it is giving the message that get access to this device. This device does not meet the organization compliance requirement. So this is because the device which we are accessing which is non-compliant, that is the reason it is blocking access to the Azure portal. This is how you can make use of conditional access policy along with the compliance policy to prevent access to any resource or websites which is integrated with Microsoft Azure Active Directory.